Hi, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so excited to be here. I am joined by a good friend, a colleague, someone who's just such a wonderful beam. We'll get to that beam of light in the world. My friend Kaitlin Anthony, and we're here today on the Six Figure Certified Coach podcast. Welcome, Kaitlin.
Katie, this is so fun. And congrats on y'all's podcast. It's about time we get you on here. So excited to have you all in the podcast world and so happy to be here.
So guys, Kaitlin is an empowerment coach, a podcaster like we talked about, and a very multi-passionate entrepreneur, has her hands in a lot of things, which a lot of us do. So I think that's great inspiration for all of us listening. And she's really here on this podcast, but also here on this planet to help women come back home to their authentic selves, which means building resilience, giving up the stress, finding sanity and peace, and moving through their limiting belief systems. And, a quick story. So Kaitlin and I met in the process of publishing my first book, At Least You Look Good, Learning to Glow Through What You Go Through. And we just connected. I mean, I was losing my mind during this period of my life because it was such a big deal for me to finally be writing my story and putting it out in the world after everything that I had been through. And it wasn't until later that I realized how dynamic your story was, how much we had in common, how many big life, different phases you've gone through. And, after I had published the book, you came to me and you were like, I want to talk to you about coaching. And so we've gotten to learn even more about each other, which has been so great, but you really have been through it all. Divorce, you're a mom, like you said, entrepreneurship.
The only person who's not an entrepreneur in my family is my mom, but she's, definitely type A in the commercial real estate world and has started the Women for Commercial Real Estate in Texas. So I had real estate there. My dad has his own law practice. So, I've got the attorney there. And then my grandparents are restaurateurs. So,
oh, wow.
That has been, a big, influence in my life. And at the age of 12, I worked at it would be the trendiest store for junior high and high school girls in my neighborhood of San Antonio. And the woman who owned the store was a huge mentor of mine because with all these competing businesses, she really thrived. And there was something really special about that. And she kind of took me under her wing and showed me the ropes of building a business in the fashion industry. So again, exposed to all different kinds of things. And what I really was the most, shocked by, I guess, was how different people went through the challenges of entrepreneurship, right? Because we all, express ourselves in different ways when we're stressed or we're being tested. And I found it really interesting. And I learned a lot and put a lot in my tool bag from being able to experience that.
What do you think had you gravitate towards that woman? What do you think it was about her that stood out to you?
She really followed her intuition because so many, let me just take you far back. Okay. I don't know the age range of your listeners, but I'm talking about Von Dutch here. Okay. I don't know how many of you remember Von Dutch, Ed Hardy, Juicy. Yep. Okay. This is the era I'm talking about.
Oh girl, I had so many little sweatsuits.
Yeah. Oh, the sweatsuits. When we carried these, people were thought we were crazy because she was such a forward thinker.
Interesting.
And she's always finding things. So we always had the stuff before San Antonio caught up to what was happening. And then 6 months later, when all the stuff was gone or on sale, people were just now getting, oh my God, I have to get my hands on this. So what I thought was so great is that she didn't go along with what was trendy in the moment. She had the forethought and the intuition to bring what she felt honored herself and the kind of store she wanted to run and the brand. It was a really different way for me to see a woman business owner, because she could have easily fall into the pressure of, well, I want to sell, I want to make money, I want to sell right now what's hot. But she was like, no, they'll get to it. They'll find it, they'll come around. So I thought that was always really inspiring.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, she was really a visionary and she trusted herself. You, I think, maybe gravitated towards her because she was also doing things really creatively. Not that you can't be
Yes.
creative in those other industries, but when you choose something like life coaching or building a personal brand, which I know it took you time to get to, so we got to fill in some pieces here for the people. But when you take on that kind of career, it does like require this other level of creativity. And I think also like passion and desire, which I just think you exude. Like you just are such a beam of light. And
that means so much. Thank you.
Did you see yourself as being different from your parents in a way?
Yes.
I know that's like a little bit of a can of worms, but
what's been really beautiful about my parents is once they saw this like streak of independence, which they explained was very young, they sort of embraced it in a way. And when I say sort of, it was like, we definitely had that tension. I've always, been spontaneous and wild and very creatively expressive in that way. And I think there could have been a lot more like, you can't wear that, you can't do this. And it was never really quite like that, which I'm really grateful for. So while I think their vision would have been, they had thought differently once they realized I wasn't. So I really feel like, okay, we're just going to let Kaitlin be Kaitlin and just that's better for the world. At 12 years old, which is so funny, it definitely wasn't legal. I actually worked for store gift certificates of all things because I couldn't be paid money, but my mom was like, you love shopping at the store so much, you can work there. And I just helped hang up clothes in the dressing room. And then I ended up being like part-time buying assistant by the time I left at 18 for college, which was to New York. I went to fashion school there. And so they were like, we'll help you with like some school stuff. You're still gonna have to do your loans, but you need to get a job. And I was like, okay, fine. I found an internship at a men's custom clothing company and I became a stylist there. We primarily served, I call them like the big guys. It's NBA, NFL, guys who couldn't fit into suits. So it was all custom menswear. And that kind of catapulted me into my styling career. Stylist at the time, it was unheard of. I mean, this is when like Rachel Zoe was starting out and people were like, oh, you can like actually be a stylist for a living. You can go to school to be a stylist. And now FIT has a styling, associate's degree or whatever. Yeah. That wasn't available when I was there. So
interesting.
This was a whole new lane that was being created for people in the fashion industry. I really loved it. I loved it because I could, I was a contractor, so it was all based off commissions and sales, which I love. I loved connecting with people. I loved the travel. That job, we got bought out. The company I was contracted by got bought out by our competitor here in LA, but that was back in like, I don't know, 2008, 9. They basically let go of a lot of people in the company, but asked me to stay, but I'd have to move out to LA. I was super hesitant because I loved New York City. I still call New York home, even though I only lived there for 4 years. It was like, it's my soul. But it was 2008. We all know what happened in 2008, 2009 wasn't so great financially. So I was single, no kids. This company was offering me a really good opportunity. So I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot. What's the worst that could happen? I moved back to New York. I took the job. And again, I was still contracted, which, even though I was working for one company, I still had the ability to style and do stuff on the side. And everything was calling my shots, which I really love. Like if I really wanted to work hard, I could make good money. If I really didn't want to work hard, I wasn't going to make money, but I wasn't bound to a desk. That was enticing for me. I don't like having to be told where to be. I don't like asking for time off. So this was my thing. When I got to LA, I also went into like a fitness kind of
Mhm.
kick. I was
Mhm.
really overweight and felt the pressures of my lack of body positivity, I should say,
Yeah.
in LA. I dove really hard into fitness. While I still loved fashion, I realized that was more of like something I loved doing, but I didn't
Mhm.
want to do long term. And I was really like, how can I make a career into fitness? Because
Mm.
this is why I really like spending my time. I also loved the connections I was making, the friendships, the personal growth I was seeing. That's how I met my now ex-husband, was through fitness.
Mhm.
And we decided to start a gym together. So there's my next launch. We grew the business. He had a small starting kind of crew that was like joining him in parks or at facilities he rented. But I was like, let's make this thing like into a business.
Yeah.
And it was very successful. While I loved everything I learned from growing a gym,
Mhm.
you know, I didn't like the way it worked with my ex-husband.
Mm.
I found myself wanting to go in a separate direction, which was women's empowerment, because I was like, okay, well, I like talking to people about like weight loss and that kind of stuff. It's not really what I'm put on this earth to do, because
Mhm.
where I was really making the connections was when a new person would come in, a woman specifically, and I would ask them like, why do you want to sign up? Your membership means something here and I want to make sure you get the most out of it. So like, how can I support you in your goals? And I started in this like, I was basically life coaching through
Right.
fitness,
Yeah, I totally
and
understand.
I started to know people's stories. And then when I saw them, I'd
Right.
ask them how it was going with their goals. And then we would start like accountability trackers and all of
Mm.
these things. And it was less about how much are you weighing on a scale. And it was more
Mhm.
about how is this affecting your everyday life? And I wanted to go into start a separate company. That's like where the disconnect really started to happen with my ex. People knew
Mhm.
us as like, you know,
This like couple, this
these
like
are,
power couple
yeah,
a little bit.
I always reference Chris and Heidi Powell for those who know them, because it's like they went through a similar thing at the same time. And it's like everyone looked at them as this couple that like could do everything together. They were unstoppable. And it's like if they break up,
Mm.
there's no hope for the rest of us, you
Oh
know?
god.
And it was like it was all fake. It was all like I wasn't living my best self. He wasn't living his best self, but we were just like, we'll save face. We'll do it for the 400 kids we have as members or whatever. But it wasn't until I met my partner,
Mhm.
my now partner, that those things that really became like apparent to me, where it was the first time in my life where I saw something different for
Mm.
myself, where I knew that there was like this possibility of hope, that I could have a different life, but I'd have to decide that for myself. And I think that, it was through all of this, my now podcast that I have, which was my journal. I
Hmm.
was like, I need an outlet. It's really hard for me to put pen to paper. My brain thinks faster than I can write. So I was
Mm.
like, I just need some place where I can like put my brain and talk. And it started to be like people were listening and they liked it and they wanted to connect. And
Mm.
the Beam Life was born. That's, really where you came in, because I was like, okay, Katie, I am divorced. I have all these other jobs, but
Mm.
I really want to do the Beam Life. Like, I really want to help women who are
Mhm.
in a place just like me, who need a community to know they're not alone, to know that they can have more for their life. Um, and this is what I'm obsessed with. This is what like lights me up. But how can I make this a business? And can I? And here we are. Yes, you can.
You kept just trusting yourself, and you trusted
Yeah.
that even if you didn't know what to do right then, you'd be able to figure it out. And I just think that's so honorable because you went through so many big things back to back.
It's a saying of building your parachute on the way down, once you jump from
Mm.
the plane. And that's what I really felt like I was doing.
Interesting.
I was like, I know there's going to be ground, like, and I don't want to fall flat on my face, but I'm going to have to build this parachute pretty quickly and like figure this out. And I think, when we are tested as I say, I think women are the most resilient people in the world, but when we are truly tested as women, we can figure it out. We really
Mhm.
can, but we just have to trust ourselves and know intuitively that we have everything we need to make
Mm.
it work.
When we're walking a path that's like, it's like workable for us, but it's not everything we want. It's not everything we need. Things start to get shaken up, and we start to feel, it starts to feel like clothes that just don't fit anymore.
Oh,
And
love that. Yes.
of course you do, fashion girl. It becomes like itchy and uncomfortable and too tight and constrictive. And then it becomes like we can't like breathe, like we can't like function, like intolerable.
Yeah.
You handle things with so much composure and so much grace. And I'm sure you had your dark moments, but like, to me, that just signifies how much you are everything that you preach around positivity and around finding like what really lights you up, and finding that inner confidence. I think one thing I hear a lot of new entrepreneurs and new coaches go through is like having some early success and then kind of freaking out and feeling like, well, what if this is just a fluke? Like, what if I just got lucky? And you had a track record of success in different, entrepreneurial or entrepreneurial-ish careers, but there was something that within you that kept telling you that like it was going to be okay. What do you think that was?
Now it's something I talk about and I call it resilience banking. But at the time, I didn't really have a word for it. But
Mm,
it's a thing I do where I have written down some really cool things that I've done in my life that I have
mm-hmm,
gone through. And when
mm-hmm.
I say cool, I don't always mean that those were easy and like awesome cool, but what I mean
Right.
is I'm still standing cool.
Right.
And even starting at a young age, my parents got divorced when I was 7. And where I came from, people didn't get divorced. Like it was not a common thing. It was me and my
Mm-hmm.
best friend whose parents also got divorced. We were like the only
Mm,
2 kids whose parents were
mm.
not together. Starting from then and being able to be like, okay, and then, moving to New York City, not knowing anyone, not knowing a soul,
Yeah.
being able to get a job and figure like I can figure things out, and I have seen that. So it's
Yeah.
like, it always like, that's what I call now my resilience banking is like,
I
I
love
can
that.
go back in my track record and like, I
Yeah.
can see like, okay, Kaitlin, like right now is hard, but what was hard before is now easy for you. So
Right.
this one day will be easy for you. And I think being able to hold on to that thought, even on hard days,
Mm-hmm.
like gives me hope. Like it is just temporary.
And I think what's also worth noting here is like you did all of this with a child in tow, right? Like with a daughter.
Yeah.
And I think so often that people, especially women, I mean, I mostly talk to women in my career, as do you. And, we feel like we can't choose ourselves if we have a partner, if we have children, if we have aging parents, if we have, any of these things. And so talk to me a little bit about that. Like what inspired you or encouraged you or pushed you to choose yourself while having a daughter? Because so many people stay in the relationship because of the kids.
This was honestly the hardest part for me,
Mm.
because, you know, yeah, people do stay together for the kids. But I've also seen how those relationships pan out. And I knew that there was a lot of women who I spoke to coming into the gym, right? That I was life coaching without knowing I was really life coaching. And we would get down and I'd be like, so what do you think is like, you told me you gained 20 pounds over the last 2 years and you've never had an issue with gaining weight before. What do you think caused that?
Mm-hmm.
And they would be like, I'm in this really unhappy marriage, but we have 2 kids. So we have to, and I'd be like, oh, okay.
Interesting.
So there's something onto this, right? And I saw what that looks like on people. Going through my divorce at the same time, Glennon Doyle came out with her book, Untamed.
Mm-hmm.
And for those listening, my new partner is non-binary. So this was also a new relationship in myself too, as I had only been in heterosexual relationships prior to my now partnership. So this was something I was also exploring during this time of separation, motherhood, entrepreneurship. Like, let's just add COVID on top of it, baby. No big deal.
Right.
Like, let's just bring on all the things. So Glennon Doyle's book happened to come out at the exact time that I was going through this. And it was the first time I read something and saw somebody else in a similar situation. And there was a particular line in her book where she said, she thought about what if like her daughter came to her and was going through the same situation and asked for advice. And so that made me think, fast forward, my daughter and I are exactly 30 years apart. So I'm like, I imagined my daughter at 30 and me at 60. And
I'm going to cry.
I was like, and her coming to me and telling me, you know, I'm unhappy, mom. Like, I'm in this marriage and I don't feel like I'm really can be myself. And we've tried to make it work. And I just don't feel like, I feel like I made a mistake. And, you know, basically telling me all the things that were on my heart and then asking me what to do. I would tell her to follow your heart, follow your intuition, and that it's going to be okay because you know you better than anyone else in the whole world.
Right.
And so it was like, that's how I sort of like mothered myself, but also in turn felt like it would be okay because I could then really be my best for her. And what kind of example would I be showing her to stay someplace and suffocate myself, my dreams? Like, she wouldn't want that for me either. If she grew up and knew I stayed in some marriage and was unhappy for her sake, what? You know, like, no.
Right. You were sort of healing your own inner child stuff. And at the same time, laying the foundation for what your parenting journey was going to look like, because you were really, you know, faced with this mirror of what kind of mom do I want to be? And also what kind of person do I want to be? And you had this opportunity, as we often have, to mother yourself. And like, I think this is so applicable to like literally anything we choose where it feels like we're choosing ourselves, whether it's like to go on a solo trip or a retreat or to do a program or hire a coach. Or I often tell people like in the sales process, whether they're hiring a coach or they're signing up for coach training, the first breakthrough you're probably going to have is when you like make that first payment, just because like, the investment is so significant of what we either are or are not willing to invest in ourselves. And most of us don't have a budget set aside for like coaching or personal development or retreats. I mean, you and I probably do at this point, right? But only because we've made it such a pattern and we've chosen that perhaps over other things, you know, like we know that, and we also have businesses, so we can write off these investments, you know. It doesn't feel comfortable because it's not supposed to. It's not habitual yet, you know, but you have to start setting those expectations within yourself of like how this is going to go. And sometimes it's like, no, this, like, you have to sort of tell yourself in the beginning before you're comfortable yet, like, no, this is the new normal for me. Like you know, the very first personal development thing I had invested in was like $340 or something. And I was in my very, very early 20s. And that felt like so much money compared to like, you know, the books I had been reading and like the, you know, $30 like create your vision board workshop I had gone to when I was living in New York. And so I remember that, but like doing that for myself set the foundation for then for me to go then invest thousands of dollars into a coach training certification. And when I started my first business, my spray tanning business, buying the equipment and being like, I'm going to make this back for myself. And it became this process of like investing in myself, paying myself back, investing in myself again, paying myself back again. And just knowing that every time I did that, I would grow incrementally. I don't know.
Yeah.
I would grow enough that it made sense, and then I would be the next version of myself who knew what to do at that next level.
Totally.
So it just requires so much self-trust. And when we're in it, we sort of don't know like what's what, and our lives can feel like really shuffled. Now that you've seen yourself evolve so much, what would you say to yourself back then when you were trying to navigate all of this?
Oh my God. So I would have written myself a freaking novel. Okay.
Okay.
Like I'll use my marriage as an example because it's something we've been talking about. There were signs that I knew this wasn't the best fit, that we probably should just remain friends.
Interesting.
That it just isn't the partnership I dreamed of. But I let other things rule me by saying, but you're 27. You should totally get married and you need to be thinking about having a kid. You've always wanted your own business and this person wants to own a business too. Like you guys can do it together.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of things that I ignored intuitively. And I think that what I would say to myself is have that reminder that listen to your intuition and believe what it's telling you, because our intuition knows, like our body physically tells us, but so many of the times we don't lean into it enough. So like, that's why we stay stuck, because we don't lean into what it's telling us when it's saying to move.
Yeah.
Or we ignore it. And then we end up in places that we don't want to be. And so, yeah, I really would say intuition.
Some juicy couture right there.
We need the velour sweatsuit.
I heard they're coming back.
I would wear it because it was so comfy.
When you and I started talking about you going through coach training, it was very like, I want to explore. I feel like this is something I might want to do. I'm not sure. I feel like I'm already doing it. Now you've done it. Congrats to you. Where were you when you started? And where do you feel that you are now in terms of your confidence as a coach, in terms of your coaching technique, in terms of your coaching business, like all of it?
Literally 180 different. Let's just start off by saying I didn't have a real coaching business. It didn't make sense. There was no like structure, or it'd be like someone, oh, I'll coach you, right? Kind of thing. But there was no structure to it. There was no rhyme or reason. There was no like, it just didn't make any sense. For someone who's done so much entrepreneurship, this was like embarrassing to myself. So, but it's a discovery. It's part of the discovery, right? But what I really came to you with was because I love what IGC has done. I love that. I love the story of like, how you and Liv have like just totally taken this like idea and dream and made it into this basically sanctuary and place and community. I am a community person. I don't do well with one-on-one. I love group. That's why I do primarily group coaching. It's what I love. From, where I started was basically random clients, and I was, doing a ton of other jobs to make money. I loved my podcast, but I was like, how can I like really make this whole Beam Life thing into this vision that I have? And what I really realized what I was lacking was the mentorship and the skills, because there's a difference, as you know, but maybe listeners don't, into having a conversation with someone into coaching someone. And I think that that's really the difference is like when I coach, it's not me and a girlfriend sitting down having coffee.
Right.
It's me asking some really powerful questions. It's allowing them to open up places in their brain and in their soul and in themselves that they haven't quite been able to think about before. And so I think that that was like the biggest turn for me was learning how to have these deeper conversations, these deeper connections, so that
Mhm.
it really created these transformations. It's it's the best feeling in the world, and I'm so grateful that I now can do it with such confidence because that's what I was lacking. I was really lacking that the guidance, the mentorship, the coaching, the skills, um, to make it a business. And I'm rocking it. I'm loving it. So it's good stuff.
Yeah, you're totally rocking it. You're totally killing it. And let's show a little love for your 6 month ago self. Like, because there's so many people who listen to this podcast who are coaches. And if you guys can't see me on video, I'm putting
The
quotes
air
up in the
quotes.
air. Yeah. And like, you were coaching and I'm sure you were getting results for your clients. I know you were.
Sure. Sure.
But there's this other level that's available to us. And, the coaching industry is unregulated as of now. There's talk of this changing, but legally, you can go out in the world, call yourself a coach, and you don't have to be certified. You don't have to go through training, right? But it's sort of like the comparison of like knowing how to dress yourself versus like being trained as a stylist or having years of experience working with big companies styling and styling, NFL players or NBA players or whatever. Or like, okay, you know how to work out, but just because you know how to work out doesn't mean you know how to take that and bring that to an array of people, right? And I think
100%.
another like wall that we kind of hit when we don't have training is we can't coach anyone outside of what we've experienced because we tend to pre-training or certification or really understanding what coaching is and what coaching isn't. We tend to have this idea that coaching is life experience. That couldn't be farther from the truth. Now, your life experience can inform your coaching and can inform your niche and your audience and also build a lot of trust. Like if I've been divorced, maybe I'd prefer to work with you than someone who hasn't been. Like that makes sense, right? Like when people's lives start to get a little different from yours, sometimes when we're not trained, we get a little wonky. And that's why in IGC, we make such a big push towards teaching how to coach anyone around anything. And so I think for me, when I went through coach training, like that was the other thing. I was very self-conscious about being in my early 20s and could I really be a life coach? I really didn't know if it was something that I would enjoy, that people would trust me around. Turns out the opposite was true because I took my natural skills and I elevated them. But similar to you, like I was like, well, how is it really different from just like talking to people? And it turns out it's like a completely different art, a completely different skill set. It's just not the same thing, but it's hard for us to see that when we really want to be able to like hack it on our own.
One of my first clients had a child loss.
Mm.
And it was about trusting herself because she was fearful of everything.
Yeah.
And of loss and of death. This is not something I have much experience with at all.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, universe, I see you out here testing my skills. Okay.
Right.
Okay. But the best part about having skills is that I was like, I got this because it's not about me. It's not about my experience.
Right.
It's about how can I support you in what you're going through, but also for you to be able to see the resilience that you have within yourself. Pre-training, I would have been like scurrying around trying to give advice and doing all these things. I'm like, this is so far from what coaching actually really is. It's a very different lens that I look through now. And I'm so grateful because like, of course, yes, my clients were seeing transformation, but I was also way more choosy about who I felt like I could work with because I
Mm.
was nervous about that kind of stuff. And now it's like, if we have a connection and I feel like this is going to be a good place, it doesn't matter what you're working on.
I love that perspective too, because I feel like so many people get into coach training or thinking about coach training and they're like, they feel like they need to have a niche. Like they get very like laser focused on like niching and finding a niche. And like the way the coaching industry right now is, especially if you play on like social media and stuff, people are like, some people are like very, very niched. And there's this idea that you have to be like that to be successful. I call total BS on that. I actually myself am more of a generalist, but I love the way that you said it, Kaitlin, which is like, it doesn't matter. Like, as long as we have a connection, I can coach you. It doesn't matter what your specific goals are, not that there's anything wrong with like being a divorce coach or being a marketing coach or being like a social media coach. Those are all really valuable. But for the people out there who are like, I don't know what niche I want, or I like to talk to all people. I like to solve different problems. I like to partner with people around different things. That's okay. Like that's allowed too. And when you feel confident in your coaching skills and you know how to run a project plan and you know how to work through question sets and you know how to give reflections and you know how to challenge people and have practice areas and like all these things, you have all the pieces of the puzzle. It's just then about like helping that person open the book so that you can help guide them through their individual experience. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's such a pleasure to be in your presence as always. You just like exude such a glow and so much beauty and inside and out. Is there anything that we didn't get to talk about that you want to tell our people before we go?
If anyone listening is wanting to like level up in terms of their coaching experience, like even if you've been coaching for a while or you're seeking just a community of support, I would, I always tell people if you're on the fence, it's just like take that one extra step and really see what this could bring for them, because I was totally on the fence, right? It's like I didn't know I was scared to make the investment. I was nervous about what this would mean for myself. And I really thought long and hard about it. But going back to that intuition is like, my intuition told me now was the time. And I'm so grateful. I love this community. And what's really, I think, probably one of the most amazing things that have come out for me over the last, I would say 6 months, is that this community doesn't end. It's not like so many other programs that it's like the community, ends when the graduation does. It's like, we're part of this forever. And it's really great. It's powerful. I've connected with so many women and partnered and, learned, and it's just beautiful. So those are my parting words. Get off the fence and go.
That's very sweet. I wasn't expecting a little commercial, but I'll take it. Okay. And if we want to work with you, if we want to hire you, if we want to do one of your group programs, where do we find you on the interwebs?
Instagram is where I hang out the most. So at The Beam Life is my handle. Mm-hmm. And I also have a private Facebook group, which I get a little more personal in, we can have more interaction in. So those are the two best places. And of course, my podcast, which is also The Beam Life. I'd love, love, love to connect.
Yeah. So we'll post all of those links in the show notes. Thank you so much, Kaitlin, for being here, for sharing your story, for being so vulnerable. I remember I cried when you interviewed me on your podcast. I didn't know I was going to cry interviewing you on your podcast. So that's an interesting twist, but you just do it for me. So guys, follow Kaitlin, get hooked up with her. She's incredible. And thank you so much for listening today.